Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Kaizen Synergy Legal Practice webinar on how to set up your COVID-safe legal compliance plan. My name is Nihal Samra. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director of the law firm Kaizen Synergy, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. This session is being recorded all the way through to the question and answer part of the session and is being made available on our YouTube channel, and all materials that we are using will also be circulated to all attendees. This series of sessions that we have been running has been incredibly popular across the not-for-profit and community services sector. With that, we will be covering off some of the case examples that agencies have been doing in terms of running their COVID-safe plan over the past few months now as well too. That said, I'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners from where you join us from around the country today. So today's session, this is an outline of today's session. We are going to look at the Victorian Premier's announcement from yesterday and also look at some of the legal compliance obligations that have been announced since then. While people are joining us from around the country, the relevance of this is quite important because it sets the guidelines on how the directions that the states will follow in terms of setting up COVID-safe plans and the likes, and also what information and registers are also now available as of this morning too. So I will come to that as well too and give you an outline of what that actually looks like. The learnings of that is obviously important to be shared across different states and territories as well too, as a bit of a coordinated and national approach has been taken, especially from the Commonwealth Government's direction on the role of the COVID safe plans over the past few months now. The other part we're going to look at is why is it important? What is it going to do for you as well too? It sounds like an obvious question, but we need to put it into context around what are the functions of this COVID safe plan and where does it fit within your business operations as well. As part of this, from a legal compliance point of view, also looking at what the duties of directors and officers are in this space as well too. There's obviously talk around work health and safety guidelines and the likes, so we're going to cover that off as well. Overall, what we're also going to look at is the background and context of the legal compliance framework and policy directives. Out of this, what we really want to give you as a take-home message is a set of timely resources that you can start to use as of today, and also look at what COVID-safe systems, activities, other similar agencies and companies like yourselves have been doing that is actually working. So we've got three very different agencies that I'm going to show you of what they've done as well too, and really look at what systems they've put in place, some of which systems have been put in place as part of their COVID plan for a number of months now. In Victoria, there is obviously a push to have COVID safe plans in place today, and then also moving towards this Friday as well too. But we're actually going to look at, well, what has actually worked for these agencies and how have they managed the notifications of staff and all the other parts of the plan that needs to come into effect as well too, rather than just focusing on the plan itself. So we're going to walk you through this as well too, and you will also get materials to support the works that you're doing as well. As I've mentioned, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded all the way up to the question and answer session, where we will switch off the phone lines and computer lines as well too, to protect people's privacy. But certainly if you do have any questions, by all means, raise those via your chat line as well. As I've mentioned, the webinar will be published on our YouTube channel as well too, and you can also see past webinars that we have been running since the start of this year, specifically around COVID-19. And this covers a range of different topics as well. All materials that we use, including these slides, will be circulated to all attendees as soon as possible after this webinar. And also, any questions that are also being asked, even from past webinars, will also be added to our knowledge base weekly circular. So that way you're getting information at hand. And if there are further webinars being run as well too, you'll also get information on those questions being asked and sessions as well, to really give you a knowledge base that you will have access to out of this. Obviously, if you do have any questions, you can direct those back to us as well too. My direct mobile number is there. We are working from home as well, like many other agencies across the state and across Australia as well. But also our switch is open in the event that you do need to contact us after hours or during normal business hours as well too. But certainly one of those channels via switch, mobile or email is certainly open to you as well too, if you do have any questions and you are watching this after this live session today. So let's have a look at the Victorian Premier's announcement just briefly in terms of the context and also the requirements imposed around COVID-safe planning. And as I said, this really acts as a bit of a learning guideline for agencies joining us outside Victoria. And also I will add that a lot of the material that we're also going to cover off today covers and includes a lot of material from Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia and WA as well too, in terms of some of the reference material and guidelines that we are using. So with it, on Monday, the 3rd of August at 3:15, the Premier of Victoria made an announcement that all open businesses and services will have until 11:59 on Friday, the 7th of August, to enact a COVID-safe plan. This plan must focus on safety, prevention, and response in the event that coronavirus is linked to the workplace. Now, as part of this lockdown and for agencies that may well be based in New South Wales, and there's growing concern even today around outbreaks, and in Queensland as well too, it is being monitored, that effectively a stage 4 lockdown is now in place, and it gives you an indication of where things can go and how rapidly things can change as well too. The following retail services plus everyone involved in our frontline response will continue to operate. So these include these companies and services here, including supermarkets, grocery stores, bottle shops, pharmacies, petrol station, banks, news agencies, and post offices as well. Specific companies and businesses have been directed to cease for at least the next 6-week period. And these include retail, some manufacturing, administration, and these businesses will all need to close by 11:59 today, effectively, unless they have a specific circumstance that means that they need longer to shut down safely. But also specific stores may be open, but for tradespeople only. Now you can see the scope of what is happening and how quickly this happened, because this has escalated only over the last 2-week or so period. What it also means is that there are some industries that are permitted to operate, in industries that can't close, for example, but there are mandated reductions to the numbers of workers on site. And this includes the meat industry, warehousing, construction sector, and also workplaces that are continuing to operate will have additional requirements, including PPE and staggering shifts and staggering breaks. So as part of this, even before we look at COVID-safe plans, there is the need to look at how agencies have flexed in terms of looking at the challenges that these new legal requirements have been in place just since Monday this week, and what have they done. So we have run these COVID-Safe Plan webinars over the past few months. And what we've seen is the three agencies that I will show you today. I'll actually show you how they're actually flexing flexing almost instantly to be able to adjust to these new requirements as well too, and really give you some hands-on practical solutions to running your own COVID safe plan for your agency. Now, as part of this, what has just recently come out, and when I say recently, literally within the last 12 hours, is that the Premier of Victoria has put out your COVID safe plan and requirements that employers need to meet. And we can actually see this directly on this particular website here. So you will find that some of the material that we have taken already has simply been a carbon copy of from different state and regulatory agencies. And I will make reference to that throughout the session. We don't believe in reinventing the wheel around things. And if we can take information and copy it directly from where it is, the source location, then I will certainly inform you about that as well. So with it, what this gives us is effectively a framework that reinforces what agencies that we've been working with have already been doing for the past number of months now as well. So employer obligations as directed by the Victorian Premier is that under stage 4 restrictions, workplace that remain open must have a COVID safe plan in place that is regularly updated unless they are a small business with fewer than 5 employees. Ensure that any workers that can come home or work from home are able to do so. Collect records of all workers, subcontractors, customers, clients attending the premises for 15 minutes or longer. 1 worker per 4 square meters of enclosed workspace. Unless an exemption applies, ensure that workers do not work across multiple sites for multiple employers. Ensure that workers are in good health. Workers cannot work if they are unwell, and employers must not require workers with symptoms to work. If your worker is unwell, then you must send them home and direct them to be tested. They must stay home until they have a result. Report any positive cases of COVID-19, in this case to the Department of Health and Human Services, WorkSafe, health and safety representatives, and notify your workplace. Also, notify your workforce, beg your pardon. Regularly clean your facilities, shared spaces, and provide additional cleaning supplies, and undertake risk assessments for cleaning and the potential closure of your workplace in certain situations. Now, this is something that has just been released by the Premier in the last, as I mentioned, 12 hours. With it, in addition to that, the COVID Safe Plan guidelines that they've released and how to prepare a COVID safe plan, and we can actually see this was released on 4th of August 2020, just yesterday, and outlines 4 key steps around your actions to help prevent the introduction of coronavirus into your workplace. The level of face covering of personal protective equipment is required, how you will prepare for and respond to a suspected confirmed case, and this plan must demonstrate how you will meet all of the requirements set out by the Victorian government. Some high-risk industries or workplaces have additional requirements of employers and employees. Now, this is something that is, as I've said, and you can see it here, has just been released on the 4th of August. In addition to this, the template for workplace attendance register. This is an example. This is a template that can be adapted or used by workplaces. And what they've said here is date, first name, phone number. You can see that people are expected to check in time, check out time, what the relationship of the business is, and also areas visited. And with this, in addition to this, effectively from 11:59 today p.m., employers that require their staff to attend a worksite must issue a work permit to their employees. This is an employer's responsibility. penalties up to 19, just over nine, not just over $19,826 for individuals, and up to $99,132 dollars for businesses will apply to employers who issue work permits to employees who do not meet the requirements of a work permit scheme. So you can see that there are significant fines being imposed under this stage 4 lockdown. In addition to that, there will also be on-the-spot fines of up to $1,600 for individuals and $9,913 for businesses for anyone who breaches the scheme requirements as well too. So the actual imposition and fines that are now being imposed and effectively policed is now significant. So what we are seeing around this and the directions being posed, and we fielded a lot of calls in the last literally this week, is how do we manage our COVID-safe plan? There seems to be a lot of paperwork involved. What do we actually need to do in order to do this? We ran this session last week, and we've had some 1,200 agencies join that particular session, and we've got a similar number today as well too. And quite simply, over the last week, we have onboarded 1,200 companies, or just over 1,200 companies in the past week to support your COVID-safe plan. With the materials that we will be sending out to you, you will get access to your own COVID-safe plan portal, which will include ability for you to directly manage your agency's plans as well too. We do have a single seat that we've set up for each company as well too, and attendance. It is something that we are supporting the community services sector on, and something that you will have access to as of today, when all of the materials go out to yourselves as well too, with the login details. And I will come into that. So with just a brief introduction of our law firm for you as well too. Effectively, our legal firm has been working across the community services sector for the past 10 years. With that, we have also received NAIDOC awards from Aboriginal and community service agencies. With it, we've also set up a legal compliance platform that effectively allows agencies over the past 10 years to manage not only their documents, but all their compliance obligations, HR areas. And it's this platform and resources that we've also opened up for your agency as well to access. With it, I will come back to that and show you what that also looks like, but it effectively allows you to manage your COVID-safe plan and actions and activities from a single dashboard. And we are giving you access to one seat to allow you to get your information on a single space for you as well. So let's have a look at today's agenda and the COVID-safe plan. Certainly, if there are questions that are coming up, we'll certainly get to those as well too, and happy to answer any questions as we go through to today's session. So with it, I'd also just like to take the opportunity to thank 3 agencies that are sharing their information with us. Rumballara Aboriginal Cooperative, Women's Housing Limited, and Wild Projects as well too. Just a bit of introduction and overview of them. On one scale, you've got Rumballara Aboriginal Cooperative and Laurie Seville, I recognise, the Chief Operating Officer. They operate a multi-service services from multi-services. They run everything from aged care to justice to community outreach to medical services. They have a large number of sites and up to 200 to 300 staff that are working from multiple sites across their services. With it, the other agency is Women's Housing Limited, and I recognise and thank Judy Lyne, the Chief Executive Officer there. They provide women's refuge and transitional housing services. Interestingly enough, they were actually registered in and were caught up in the hotspot areas more recently, where they had to support clients in some of Melbourne's hotspots, even though they're not actually based in any of the hotspots themselves. They have a medium-sized group of around 50 odd staff, which is slightly different to Rumbalara. And again, the services that they run are also transitional support services as well too. On the other side, you've got Wild Projects, and I recognise and thank Brad Crosby, the projects officer there. They're based in Queensland. They have a staff of about 2 people, and with that, they're able to actually run services and supports, and they actually provide services to schools. So we're actually going to see how each of the COVIDSafe plan works across each of these 3 groups. So effectively, with the community services sector, and I thank you all for joining us today, we've just about got every possible community service organisation attending today, everywhere from health to education to religious groups, to community law services, as well as Aboriginal services, museums, arts, cafes, and food banks. So let's have a look at the legal compliance part of the COVIDSafe plan. Now, the COVIDSafe plan initially arose when Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, outlined the 3-step framework for a COVID-safe Australia. And with that, what came up was effectively under the step 1, step 2, step 3, there was a reference to workplaces at that stage, and this was, I'm going to say, around about a month or so ago, maybe a bit longer or shorter. Effectively under this document, it referenced a COVID-safe plan under step 1, step 2, step 3. What we found was that there is quite a myriad of legal compliance obligations and documents that are out there. There's posters, there's documents from Safe Work, there's the 3-step framework from the Department of Health. There's legislation that's out there as well too. There was the mobile app as well too that people were talking about. So there was a lot of information that was actually out there. And really the confusing part for many agencies was, where do I actually start? So this was something that we actually did well before, and as I said, a number of months ago, when we started to look at working with agencies around this, and those 3 agencies, and there were many others around it as well too, that said, look, let's put up a COVID-safe plan for agencies to work from. And as part of that, there was 4 things of what a COVID-safe plan is meant to do. And when I say meant, I mean actually looking at not just what it's going to do, but what it's actually meant to do, and actually setting up the framework. So what it's meant to do is to ensure that staff are kept safe, community and services are supported and delivered, that it changes and supports your business, and also supports you to continue to deliver services. And this is the mantra that has actually been repeated by many premiers, not just in Victoria recently, but even Queensland, WA, Northern Territory. A lot of the premiers have effectively looked at these 4 items. Now, one of the things that we're also, from a legal point of view, looking at is it's also to ensure your company meets its legal compliance obligations as well. And that is under also work health and safety laws, under public health laws, under privacy laws, under fair work laws, just to name a few. Now, in Victoria, over the past few weeks, there has just been an unfortunate challenge for many aged care services. And already there's talk of class actions being taken against some aged care services, but also around judicial inquiries into the management of the hotel quarantine scheme as well too. And really, so this is a very real situation, not just obviously from a clearly there's a public health response to COVID, but also to the management of your company as well too. So when we look at these things, absolutely, categorically, the first 4 items is clearly a public health response that really needs to be set. But I also want to acknowledge also that the COVID-safe plan, if managed correctly, will also give you a degree of protection as well, to make sure that you're complying with all your legal compliance obligations, and effectively protecting you because the systems are and activities are there to make sure that you're doing what is reasonably practicable for your company to be protected as well. And it is something that I wanted to mention very early on in today's session. So why is it important? The COVID-19 Safe Plan, COVID-19 will be with us for some time. So it's important that your business has a plan and continues to plan to keep your workplace healthy, safe, and virus-free. For your directors and officers of your company as well too, if you are a director or officer, you need to exercise due diligence to ensure that your employees comply with their duties and obligations in relation to COVID-19. And due diligence means that you must acquire and keep your knowledge of the COVID-19 situation up to date. And what we have been doing to support agencies around this, quite simply, is to provide some of the newsletter services and also run the webinars and knowledge bases to ensure that you're also kept up to date with these as well too, and not just within your own state boundaries, but also learnings from across states to see how other parts of Australia and other agencies may also be improving their systems to support their COVID-safe plans. So let's have a look at some of the legal compliance obligations. Now, some of the reference material that we'll just make reference to is that if we look at even before the Victorian government issued this in yesterday around the 4th of August for their COVID-safe plans, in previous information, and you'll see this on our webinars as well too, that even Prime Minister and Cabinet had released My Business COVID-Safe Plan, and they had some checklist tools. South Australia come up with their COVID-Safe Plan document as well too. Queensland equally had a COVID-safe business roadmap for easing restrictions and how they would actually manage that. And also going back on the 30th of April, the Victorian Community Services sector was released a COVID-19 plan for the community services sector, and it had a number of pandemic checklists that you can see that were outlined here as well too. So there was a lot of state examples that were provided. Now, as part of that, what we have done is actually load in and onto the Gemba platform, which you will all have access to your own ones, as a lot of these resources. So it is something that you will have access to as part of the resources. And in the COVID Safe Plan section, step 1, step 2, step 3, we've loaded the specific activities and key things that you need to look at. For Victorian agencies, that now also includes specifically the checklist that we've also seen as part of that. And that includes this document here, which I will just slide onto the screen for you as well. And with it, here it is here, it's just in the Word format. We've actually taken the key items across this, looked at each of these items, and essentially loaded that into your COVID Safe Plan activities that you have as well too. So you'll certainly get those too. So essentially what we're looking at with the COVID Safe Plan from a legal compliance obligations is that if a business chooses to not utilize the provisions of the COVID Safe Industry Plan, it must operate under the relevant conditions listed under the roadmap and public health directions. In each circumstance, when we're looking at even the best laid checklist, you'll still need to look at what is your activity in terms of meeting its requirement. It's not going to be a simple case of going, oh, I need to tick this off and then I'm done. Effectively, if for each of the criteria in your COVID Safe Plan, the control measures to be put in place is either 3 things: substitution, isolation, or administration. So substitution means that if there's a process that you need to change, for example, substitute handling cash with contactless payment, then that's a substitution. Isolation means that you're enforcing social distancing by providing barriers or screening workers, etc. Or administration means that you're providing training and supervision and instruction. So you'll find when we've actually look at some of the activities shortly, these 3 things keep on popping up where we've either substituted an activity, changed an isolation, or made it into an administrative measure in terms of looking at the COVID Safe Plan itself. Now, when we went back, and this is some time ago, Queensland government actually came up with a pretty comprehensive process for the COVIDSafe plan. And with it, they looked at having checklists. So things like, well, what is your requirements for keeping workers safe? Requirements for social distancing, requirements for keeping your workplace clean to stop the spread, requirements for workers and customers and health hygiene, and all that sort of thing is what they looked at from checklist. Equally, they then went through and had a number of areas around best practice. So around this, what are the measures that a business should put in place to conduct a best practice safe, COVID safe business in terms of social distancing? Looking at conditions of entry. So in this case, looking at ways the business in your company can safely control the flow of customers in and out of your business itself. Now, this equally applies to companies like, and you would have already seen this and maybe experienced this, and I'll use these as examples of Coles and Woolworths and Bunnings, some of the larger businesses where they've actually controlled the flow in and the flow out. And that's an example of conditions of entry as well too. In regards to customer interaction, and this is all part of the COVIDSafe plan, should consider ways in which you can safely interact with customers. Completing services and payments, again, looking at how you complete service pack orders, carry out transactions. And we had a manufacturing agency contact us yesterday around this. And some of that was that they actually provide, for example, dispatch by actually leaving the goods, confirming the client that's coming in, or customer as they call them, coming in, and they would then provide well above the 4 meter or 1.5 meter distancing for that person to come up and collect their goods. Communal facilities, which is very common to community service organizations, volunteer services right around the country. Again, managing and having checklists for managing and cleaning communal facilities and shared spaces. We'll see this in women's housing services where they actually had joint tenancies and a communal area. And again, what is the systems that they've got in place? We will cover off as well too. Also managing egress and emergency evacuation situations as well too. Again, one of the areas we found that has been lacking for and a challenge for agencies was not thinking about well, what happens in an emergency situation if there is a fire or we need to run fire drills, for example. In the past, fire drills may have been run, and the first thing everyone does is leave their office and actually go and congregate across the street or on near a signpost or the likes, and there isn't any social distancing there. So again, actually managing egress and emergency situations in this case is also important to also consider as well. Staff practices is the other part that the Queensland government outlined in this particular guidance document, and we have adopted it as well too, is to say that this section should consider ways your business in your company can keep staff safe, such as limiting physical interaction between workers and clients, and also workers and other persons on the site as well too. And lastly, but also important, is around the training of staff as well. It's pointless to have a COVIDSafe plan unless you also train staff around this, and with that they actually know what to actually do in order to follow your policies and your plans around this. With that, it is important that you train staff and they demonstrate an awareness of exactly what needs to be followed. And I'll come to that as well too. Equally, also following public health directions and following what the Chief Medical Officer says in your particular state or territory as well is equally important. And also, as the Victorian Premier announced, reviewing risk management processes and audits in a timely way based on the service that you run. Some agencies have also put their statement of compliance that they've completed their COVIDSafe plan, as well as the date and the time, in order to make sure that people and clients that visit them, or actually even on their website, are actually meeting their requirements as well. So with it, what we have done is load in the COVIDSafe plan information for you, and this is what will give you a jump start around this for you to get started once you receive the materials. So let's have a look at the legal compliance obligations. So step one, effectively under the COVID plan, talks about non-work gatherings of up to 10 people, and they've got a listed area. Step two talks about non-work gatherings of up to 20 people. It's lessening the restrictions. And step three talks about easing restrictions to non-work gatherings of up to 100 people. Now, what we've seen in Victoria is effectively a contraction of these steps and effectively an escalation back to a lockdown stage for restrictions. So with it, there are obviously duties on directors and officers to review your business policies, procedures, and reporting to ensure you address the risks of COVID-19. Effectively, going back, your 4 principles to look at is maintaining social distancing, good hygiene, staying home if unwell, and frequently cleaning and disinfecting communal areas, as well as ensuring your COVIDSafe plan meets your workplace and premises safe work requirements. Now, in putting this COVIDSafe plan together for you and how it actually looks like it, most agencies will simply jump when they haven't thought about this and there's a rush to do this, is to almost go, right, let's come up with our COVIDSafe plan, let's take a template and let's just run through a checklist and bang, we'll just tell employees this is what we need to do and that'll be okay. With time, what we have given, and I'm going to say leapfrog you into your COVIDSafe plan. So you'll certainly get one around that. It'll meet the requirements that you need to meet. But what we have done to give you assurance around this, and what has worked for agencies, and we've seen it work for agencies around this, is to go through what we call a quality standards framework approach to developing the COVIDSafe plan as well. We've effectively taken a QIP, which is a quality standards framework, and with that, we've overlaid it onto the COVIDSafe plan. Now, the good thing about this is that, as I said, this will leapfrog you into being able to use these materials. But just for completeness, how we've actually done this is this. We've looked at the compliance obligations. Excuse me, let me go back one slide. Thank you. We've looked at the compliance obligations, what you need to meet. We've looked at what are self-assessment tools are actually out there, and looking at ways that you can actually identify areas for improvement or gaps. And this follows a plan, do, check, act approach. It works in community and health community services. Whether you're working under ISO standards or education, it still follows the same quality framework for yourselves. So we have adopted, in doing this approach, a quality cycle that can be adopted for your plan. This means that if you're using the checklist, as even the Victoria Premier outlined in his statement, then what do you do with that? Does that feed into your quality plan, your COVIDSafe plan? Or is it just a checklist that it's another bit of paper for you to do? So effectively, it also means that when your staff or volunteers are completing their COVID assessments or work registers, that's then fed back to you, so you're actually able to keep on top of this. So how we've actually structured this is in this way, is effectively looking at the legislation that applies. And as I mentioned, there's the biosecurity legislation, there's the public health laws around this, there's the policies that have come from, which I'll outline now, from places like Safe Work, Fair Work, privacy commissioners, checklists that even Safe Work has provided as well too. And with that, there's also the pandemic plans. And I've just put on Victoria's one, the pandemic plan for Victorian health sector, as an example of that. What that gives you is the self-assessment tools that will feed into your COVIDSafe plan. From there, you're able to identify the areas for improvement and also feed it back into your COVIDSafe plan, because this is about making sure that your workplace and staff and clients are kept safe during this period of time. So what you'll see is that you've got your your safe work checklist, and this is a document you can go on to Safe Work and have a look at their website as well too, and you'll see that there's literally a myriad of documents on there. So we've ticked off your compliance part of it. Equally, you've then got your self-assessment tools, and you're able to identify your areas of improvement. Now, going back a few months ago, the Commonwealth came up with a series of directions that agencies are to follow. And with that, this was for you should undertake a formal risk assessment process and apply a hierarchy of appropriate controls. And they actually came up with some 14 different items that agencies should be looking at. These included employers should have policies, procedures, and technology to support employees to work from home. They talked about employees are supported to work from home if possible. Social distancing is supported and trying to ensure 4 square meters per person. And also looking at things like promoting hygiene and, discouraging carpooling. And this was going back a few months ago as well as a range of other items that you can see on your screen here. And that actually also included things like developing a policy that requires staff to stay home as well. Now, these templates you're also going to have access to for these key policy areas as well. Now, with it, there are also clearly obligations on employees during this time as well. And this means that for a COVID-safe workplace, employees should be looking at if the person you're concerned about is at the workplace, they should isolate, seek advice, also ensure the person has transport to their home or to their medical facility. They need to clean and disinfect the areas, identify and inform, and review this process as well. So there are key obligations that employees need to have within your agency too. And this is now also consistent with what has just been released yesterday by the Victorian Premier around the template for workplace attendance register. And this is an example of what's come up. So with it, there are also obligations that employees, it's not just sitting with employers to also follow. So when we look at who is involved and who is responsible, when we talk of a COVID-safe plan, you can start to see that this is to effectively make this work within your agencies. Effectively, it means that it needs to involve not just one person, but a number of staff or volunteers within your agencies as well. So the COVIDSafe Plan is just one part for it, and I'm talking for it to be really effective. Now, on that, as you can see, we've got the things like the Safe Work Guidelines document. We've got a series of checklist tools. The checklist tools include the COVID Daily Assessment Form, which I'll show you, the Working from Home Approval Form, Workstation Register Cleaning Form, Cleaning Register for your agency, and all of these, if staff start to use and utilize these, this will then inform and help you meet your COVID-Safe Plan obligations. Now, out of that, what you can then see is that on your Gemba dashboard, and I'll just jump into here, what you're able to see, and if you just go to Gemba 360, and this is a resource tool that you'll have access to as well too. It's just my demo login that we've got for this as well. And with it, effectively what comes up is your tools, which you can see on the left-hand side. So my daily assessment form, for example, pops up here, and I'll show you what that looks like. It can simply be adding a new entry, and you've got that tool there. You've also got your COVID-Safe Plan loaded in the disaster module section as well too. And that effectively comes up under your projects, and you can start populating your step 1, step 2, and step 3 sections. Equally, you've got access to your HR space, which allows you to actually register people's details and ensure things like their registers and immunization schedules and the likes is also located here as well. And you've also got your learning tools as well, which allows you to click on this and effectively brings up your COVID safe training. And you can see that here. Now, with these tools, effectively what this gives you is all the checklists in one spot. So effectively we've taken the, and I've no shame in actually saying all of this, we have quite simply taken the safe work forms that you'd be looking at using, the registers from the relevant state or Commonwealth department as well too, and you can start using those as well. Now, looking at the activities and systems of the COVID safe plans that work for agencies. What have they actually been doing over the past few months that actually sees these work? Well, effectively what they've taken is their COVID safe plan. If we look at Rumballara, for example, they've got their plan that they've listed in. They've got their policy docs that they've loaded into the Gemba Docs area as well too. They can access their staff training, and importantly, they've got all of their pandemic forms that they're able to access across this. Now, this resource allows them, if we jump in, and I'll show you what this actually looks like. So the pandemic form, effectively staff go in, they click on this link here, the pandemic daily forms, and effectively clicks on new entry. Now, with it, effectively what we're seeing here is the registration date and time that comes up. We've got whether they've traveled into one of the hotspots, and this is just based in Melbourne for what's here. But more importantly, what they've also got is the self-assessment. So looking at, do they have, and this is what staff actually complete, have they actually got any of the symptoms marked that we are looking at? Now, if they click no to all of these, they can go ahead and save those. But if they mark it, one person marks it as a yes, that they do have body aches, for example, or if they've got a temperature, for example, then effectively what happens is that the manager immediately gets an alert sent by email around this. Now, to give you an idea around this, they've been running this particular form where they've checked in before they even start work around this. And these forms that you can see here, that's available to you as well too, allows you to effectively jump straight in and get the notifications around this. Now that the Premier in Victoria has put in around the workstation register, they've already got, since they've been doing it for a number of months now as well, exactly the same process where staff are self-screening before they come in. They run aged care services and other high-risk areas as well too. And what they've found is that they're able to manage their any symptoms that staff may present or any issues that they have, and they're literally able to do it on the spot where it is. Now, keep in mind, they're an agency of 200 to 300 people as well. Now, with it, they've also got their monitoring and their HR register, as well as their risk register. Now, the Premier has turned around just yesterday and asked for the risk register to also be managed, and effectively they've got those incidents that they're also managing there. Now, keep that also in line with some of the policy listings as well too, and these are all the resources that you do have access to as well too, as part of the resources that we are sending out to agencies. So with it, you've got access to key template documents that you're able to utilize and start using today as well. This was one of their policies that they've listed in. Now, as part of that, by running the daily assessment form and the COVIDSafe Plan, they're able to then feed that back into what they're reporting on and what they're actually seeing as part of their reporting side. So if any time that they need to go in to actually have a look at their disaster system or their COVID reporting, they simply click on this button, and what they're able to see is their specific projects. And if they needed to go in, then effectively they're opening this up and they've got an instant report of about where each of their COVIDSafe Plan activities are at. And effectively a report can be generated directly, and I'm doing that now for you, of an example of how it in fact looks like and what the reporting side of this is here. And literally comes up effectively this quickly for them as well. Now within it, if you compare that to another agency around this, Women's Housing Limited. Now, they're an smaller agency, medium size, of only about 50 odd staff. But effectively what they've done is they've got their pandemic forms on here, but the difference is that what they've done is actually do their screenings weekly because they don't have direct contact with their particular clients. So with it, because so many staff are working from home, they've actually done it on a weekly basis. The difference here is that what they're able to do directly from here is to link this directly to their website. So their plan now actually is promoted directly back onto their website as well too. So for your agencies, it's equally important when you look at your plan, how do you get this information out to your clients around this? Well, effectively you can do that via your website as well. So effectively what we're seeing on this is effectively the management of their record and COVIDSafe plan directly by their agency and across this reporting. By involving all of their staff around the checklist, and I commend the Victorian Premier on this, of identifying checklists as a tool to be used. But in saying that, we need to have the checklists that are linked that will feed back to your COVIDSafe plan as well. Equally, if we look at wild projects around this, you can also then see that they are an agency of 2 people as well. And effectively what they have is effectively a handful of policies, plus they've also got their weekly assessment, but also they've got their referral tool on here. But effectively it's working in exactly the same way. They've got their plan, they've got their policies, they've got their staff training, they've got their pandemic forms, their registers being there for their monitoring around their HR and risk registers. And in this way, even though they're a smaller agency of 2 people that really run their operations, effectively what they're able to do is still get the same COVIDSafe plan outcomes that we're seeing with a lot of other agencies as well. So with it, and we've just got a question, and I thank Mariana for asking this in the public space, just saying, does a company with 5 employees need all these required documents? Mariana, you're right. Look, to compare it to wild projects as well too, a lot of the template documents that they have is to really support that process as well too, because there is so many unknown. With it, the documents that we've got, it's scaled. So that way you've got that information at hand, and everyone knows, I'm going to say, what song sheet we're singing off all at the same time. So with it, it gives you the templates that you can use, Mariana, and this allows you to essentially, whether you're an agency of just, as you say, 5 employees, you've got that information at hand as well too. With it, there has also been questions around what should employers do if, with respect to sick leave, when they direct staff to go home due to signs of sickness, who may normally stay at home and it is not practical for them to work from home. Effectively, using the workplace forms allows you to manage that process as well too. So that certainly is able for you to see that as well. With it, it is allows you to effectively run that, and you can see that as well too across your agencies. So that allows you to effectively run this, and you are able to view all of this information at any one point in time. Fiona, thank you for asking the question around the whether it's a free or paid service around this. Effectively, what we have done, Fiona, is open this up for agencies to have a single seat, which allows you to get this portal and access this information as well too. If you need other seats as well too, obviously there is a smaller charge around that, but what this gives you is access to the portal to be able to do this and manage this directly from your end as well too. With it, Katie's just asked, if you are a non-profit with volunteers, do you need to adhere to WHS legislation? And we are picking up the questions around this as they start to be answered. Absolutely, Katie, around this. With it, the role of volunteers around this is equally important from a work health and safety point of view. Under work health and safety legislation, there is the need to keep employees, but also staff that you have safe. Having a access to some of these registers not only allows you to monitor that as well too, but allows volunteers to also participate in these activities as well too. The role of volunteers within the community services sector is so critically important that a lot of agencies, especially in the not-for-profit sector, rely on the work that volunteers do. So we need to ensure that we're not excluding them from this whole COVID-safe approach as well too. And having the systems to do it allows you to actually do that as well. With it, we will get to the other questions as well as they come up, but just a few short recommendations that I will make, and then we will finish the presentation off and come back and circulate back to the questions, is around if we're looking at a COVID-safe plan, what we've seen that actually works with a lot of the agencies I've shown you around this, or all of the agencies I've shown you, is that the COVID-Safe Plan obviously should consist of a plan. It should also have policies. It should also have, if you have support letters from staff to say that they're working, but also pandemic forms in place for your checklist and also continuing to monitor it. It's pointless having a COVID-Safe Plan in place, but then not being able to then monitor it and effectively flex it if you need to, or expand it as things come up. The policies and disaster activities should be in line with industry plans, Commonwealth and state guidelines, and key regulators. Now, as part of this, we are opening up the templates and resources to support that with permissions and agreements from other agencies as well too. As part of that, you will get access to your COVID-Safe dashboard to commence working on this for one admin within your agency. This will really give you the key tools that you need and a starting point. It will also save you, rather than running around and trying to grab bits of paper from around the place as well and fill out one part of the form or download information. We also update this as required. We can also open this up with you for all staff, volunteers, and clients of members from your agency, but obviously there are server costs that we have. So with that, we are doing this as part of a process to support agencies. Your policies that you should have as part of that, really we've covered these off in some detail over the part of this session, but these really give you the key points to ensure that your policies have. As I've said earlier, whether you're a small agencies of literally 2 staff, right across to a large agency, some of these key areas is things that you need to be aware about as well too. With that, we will open the chat lines to answer any questions that people might have. If you do have any questions after today's session and looking at it from during our recording or on our YouTube channel, by all means, please contact us on 1300 360 360, or you can email us at support@gemba360.com.